On that note, like, do catgirls have night vision, right? Like, are they really good at seeing at night? I don't know. Do they use the litter boxes, right? Like, these are all important questions.
See, these are the things you have to think of if you're that one guy who's trying to make a kid with a catgirl to see if it will be infertile or not, is you might have to have a litter box.
Welcome to the show, everybody. So I am Tony, and I'm joined by...
I am Ryan.
All right, so we're back for, I guess this is kind of the first real episode. And as I mentioned in the previous one, Ichimon means one question. So we ask every episode one question about Japan. And today's question is, what's the deal with catgirls?
They're humans with cat ears. That's the answer. The end. See you next week.
All right. Well, having extremely short episodes like that might boost up my downloads, but not for long because people stop listening. So let's just start with like the basic, like really, what is a catgirl? Before we jump into the history and all that other stuff that we were gonna discuss. But what is, yeah, like you said, at its most fundamental thing, it's a human with cat ears, right? And
yeah, I guess throughout time it's had different ideas associated with it, but in the modern interpretation, pretty much a human girl who has cat ears, usually a cat tail, and cat characteristics in like personality.
Right. And I think it's important to note too here that in Japanese, it's generally just referred to as nekomimi, right? So neko is cat and mimi is ears. So you could be referring to the ears of an actual cat with that phrase, or any kind of cat, like boy or girl, that is a human but with those cat characteristics like we discussed. But generally speaking, it seems to be like the overwhelmingly girls, right? Young.
There are boys, but it looks roughly 90% girls from what I've seen.
Yeah, which that's a whole like interesting question to ask, like in and of itself. But so generally they will have cat features. Sometimes they might have slightly sharp incisors like a cat, or it might change from moment to moment. Like if it's especially like emotional, like funny scene, they might add certain extra characteristics.
I've noticed they normally have human eyes, but if they become more cartoony looking, like if they get super happy, they might have cat eyes.
Right. Yeah. And then there's the one that seemed to have like cat paws, kind of like instead of hands, or very like furry like wrists and like hands.
Yeah. Best example of that's probably Felicia from Darkstalkers.
From Darkstalkers. Yeah. That was a catgirl I noticed before I even was really familiar what a catgirl was. So
I realize now as we say that, I don't know the age of our audience. We might need to explain who Felicia is, because that game series is over 20 years old now.
Yeah, and Darkstalkers is not one of the bigger like fighting game franchises either. So
quick history.
Go ahead if you want.
Similar to Street Fighter, after Street Fighter, Capcom made a second fighting game series that was basically monsters fighting.
Yeah,
and there was kind of two signature characters, both who became super famous. Felicia, who was a catgirl, a little more on the furry side, where she actually had fur and paws. Other famous character would have been Morrigan the succubus, who maybe people have seen. Yeah,
especially like Marvel versus Capcom.
She's in like every crossover they've ever made.
Yeah. And the wonderful, like, I really enjoy like Felicia's background, that she was raised by like a Catholic nun or something like that, and she wants to become a pop star, and she's a catgirl. So
I also... I mean, here's a tangent for you. I don't really get what's going on with her. I've played like all the Darkstalkers.
Yeah.
She can summon miniature versions of herself to do attacks, and I don't know if those exist canonically or if that's just a fighting game thing.
I have no idea. So in terms of appearance, that's what you got. You got your general catgirls. I think we covered the main points, but also like in terms of attitude and speech patterns, there's certain things that are like feline-ish, right? So, I mean, one of the most obvious things, especially to a Japanese speaker, is that they use like nya or nyan at the end of their sentences and phrases, right? And actually this past summer when I was in Japan, I was in Fukuoka, and I was walking down the street, and there was this maid, right? They were passing out flyers for like a maid cafe, and I wasn't really paying attention, but they were giving out flyers, and I took one, just not even thinking, and then the lady told me like "arigato nyan," and then I looked and it was, oh, it's a catgirl maid.
So yes, they also do live in the wild in Japan.
Yeah, they're just out in the streets giving you like tissues and flyers to come to their shops. And then of course a lot of them behave in kind of cat-like fashion, so they'll be kind of mischievous. For example, Merle from Meriru, right, from Escaflowne, she like likes to steal things and kind of plays pranks on the main female character Hitomi. But then there's other like cat girls that are like very innocent and kind of like helpless, and so there's a range, but some do have those kind of like mischievous cat-like behaviors.
Yeah, I think the author's understanding of how cats act influences them a lot.
Right. And then, well, I mean, we can dig into this a bit deeper. We might as well jump into it, but cat girls have a big thing to do. They're very related to moe culture, right? And the concept of moe. Yeah. Could you give it a shot? Like, what's moe, Ryan?
Oh, great. That's fun. My understanding, at least as a otaku anime fan, is characters who are designed to be very cute and elicit feelings of fondness from the audience. I heard it compared to like characters that the audience will feel like they want to protect, like an older brother towards them. So they're usually female. They're usually a little bit younger, maybe shy or quiet or something like that. Kind of like a fragile style character. And the catgirl image is often mixed with that. Right.
So yeah, like those more innocent depictions, I guess you would say, are particularly fall under that moe umbrella. And the whole moe thing is like a super deep rabbit hole that, like, oh my god, it's like I was going down like pages and pages and pages.
Yeah, that would be much bigger than just talking about catgirls, I think.
Yeah. So we can't go down that path too much, but I think it is important to note though that like it really started to pop up in the 90s especially, and it's grown and grown and grown over the past like I don't know, like 20 years, and now it's like a huge thing, and again, I'm not super knowledgeable about it, but I do know that I'm not all that crazy about it. I that's just me, so everybody has their own opinion.
Yeah, it has some issues.
The increase it's I'm more of I want an interesting story rather than a little sister character that's just there to make you feel like warm and fuzzy. But anyway, so like I didn't see this written specifically anywhere, but I have this feeling that the increase of these catgirl characters that are like super innocent and helpless has really shot up in the past like 10-15 years, and I think that's really related to the whole increase in moe culture. Because like, I look back to like the 90s, like back in the 90s, like what we were just talking about, like Felicia and Meryl from Escaflowne, and I'm sure if we really thought about it, we could find a couple other examples, but those seem to be like slightly stronger characters, not like helpless characters. So it seems like there's something there. But
yeah, the mischievousness has kind of faded away in place of docileness and cuteness. And as I mentioned, one of the descriptions I read was like something that makes the viewer feel like they want to be an older brother to protect it. And I think a lot of them now are more like little kids that you could just like pet or something, which is much more moe than the previous ones.
Yeah. I mean, that's today though, but the whole idea of human-like cats or how could you put it, like cat-ish humans?
Cat-ish humans.
Yeah. Some intersection between cat and human has been around for a very long time in Japan. So of course there's the whole idea of Yōkai, which are supernatural creatures, right? Just that, again, that's another rabbit hole we could go down on someday. But
I didn't read anything saying this, but I feel it's definitely influenced from yokai stories.
It seems like, there was already an awareness of, people perhaps being cats or having cat-like features because they're secretly like a bakeneko or a nekomata or whatever. So we can kind of explain that a little bit. But
again, in case our audience doesn't know, yokai are basically I don't want to say monsters, like Japanese fairy tale creatures.
Yeah.
So the one that I think is most similar to the modern day catgirl would probably be kitsune or foxes, which could transform into humans. Right, and there's many stories of them turning into women and like luring men to play pranks on them or something.
Yeah.
Which is
and then,
similar to like the early catgirls.
Right. Like a lot of times what you'll see is for some reason something happens and then their transformation kind of deteriorates and then all of a sudden they have a tail and then that's how the human finds out, oh no, I'm actually with a fox woman.
And for whatever reason, they're always upset by it. Even there's never a character who's like, "Oh, whatever."
Well, I had a happy life. Like, what's the big deal,
Sometimes they're
right?
married for like a decade and have kids.
Yeah.
And they're just like, "What? You lied to me. Get out of my house."
It's like, I didn't cheat on you. I was just a cat secretly or a fox secretly. Yeah, so bakeneko, I think, is the closest to that. Like, literally transform, change means bake, right? And neko is cat. So there's this idea that goes all the way back to, like, the Kamakura period is what I saw, like, around the 1100s.
Yeah, really old.
Like, these cats that can transform into people. And sometimes what you'll see is, like, a depiction that looks like a human, but it has, like, cat ears or certain cat features. And this seems to have been particularly prominent in the Edo period. So, for example, I saw a mention of a kabuki play that involved a bakeneko, and I believe that was in like 1827. And there was a female with cat ears. And there's also many depictions of like red light district prostitutes that are secretly bakeneko, but have transformed into women. And then there's like ukiyo-e woodblock prints that depict females that might have like cat ears that are actually bakeneko, so they have like these cat-like features. But that's not quite what we would consider a cat girl today, right?
Yeah, the current catgirl's much younger than that, but from that history, I think.
Yeah. So it's like we were saying, it seems like there was already like people familiar with that idea, and so making the jump to a cartoon character that is using these like cat features for the effect of something cute, something interesting is not a big leap. So now we were trying to kind of pinpoint if there's some first occurrence of an anime or manga catgirl.
Yeah, and it's not that easy to find.
Yeah, it's not, and it's extra tricky. Like when you look stuff up in Japanese and you look stuff up in English in order to see if things match up, sometimes things don't match up.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that the Japanese one is right and the English one is wrong. What it does mean is like we can't say for sure either way.
Yeah.
But in Japanese, when you look this stuff up, you find that some people point to Tezuka Osamu. Of course, he's known as like the godfather of manga. He's like one of the most famous manga creators, if not the most famous. A work that he did called Ribon no Kishi, and I believe that is 1963. Yes, so 1963, and it's this story of a like princess that has to pretend to be a prince, but if people find out that it's actually a princess, then like some evil guy is going to take the kingdom away from the royal family. This whole thing. Anyway, you can find out more about that in my interview with Deborah Shamoon. I have an episode on that in Japan Station podcast if you're curious. But there's this character.
Sounds fascinating. They should definitely watch that.
Yeah. Please check out my other podcast. But the character's name is Heketo. And supposedly, when you look at the Japanese sources, that is maybe the first catgirl. But Ryan, you were looking at some images.
Yeah, I don't actually have the manga, but I looked online for frames from it, and I don't think people would call this a catgirl by current standards. The character basically is a human girl who can transform into a full cat.
Right.
The cat is slightly anthropomorphized, like it has human-ish eyes and a head, but it's pretty much just a cat. Like it's quadrupedal and everything.
Right. So, I mean, if any Ribon no Kishi, the English title is Princess Knight, but if anybody that's super familiar with that series, wants to send an email, you can try mail@japankyo.com and then tell us if we're wrong or not. But that's what we were able to find.
Yeah, at least the only frames I found.
Yeah. And it's not catgirls, but the general idea of like animal ears also pops up in a lot of media. So like we were talking about with like foxes, for example, that's particularly popular. And there's this one movie in 1949, and it's called, what was it called? Osama no Shippo, right? And the director is Mitsuyo Seo, who before a few years prior to that is the man that created Japan's first full-length animated feature film, which is a fascinating World War II propaganda film called Momotaro Sacred Sailors. And I have an episode on my other podcast about that too. Episode 3.
You covered all your bases.
Yeah, Jonathan Clements. You can go check that out. But there are characters in that have fox ears too. So fox ears and fox tails apparently. And Jonathan Clements, I emailed him. He confirmed that for me. So, you know, the idea was there, and little by little, it seems like it was popping up in other places. But there is one series that seems like most people really like point to when you ask, like, what is the series that really made catgirls a thing? And that was 1978, and it's called Wata no Kunihoshi, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that is, the English is Star
is it just Cotton Country? Oh, okay.
Star of Cottonland is the official translation as far I've seen. And it's it's very, I think this is definitely like within the catgirl trope, I guess you could say, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
this one also I've not seen, but I did look up what the character looks like. And I think this one definitely looks like the modern idea of a catgirl. Though I don't think she has a tail. It's a young girl. Honestly, the best way I can describe her is she kind of looks like the stereotypical image of Goldilocks, except add cat ears.
So just a quick run through the manga, like what it's about is, so it's like a Pinocchio story in that it follows the story of a kitten named Chibi, and sometimes referred to as just Chibi Neko too. And she's a kitten, but she's depicted as a human girl with cat ears. And the human girl with cat ears is trying to find her master, but she also is wishing to become a real girl, right? Again, like Pinocchio. And of course, there you start to see these like first allusions to this general idea of like dependence on the male character, innocence, and you know, something, those general things that eventually tie in with moe. Right. So, you know, whether you look in English or Japanese, it seems like both sources point to that. And that was by a manga artist named Oshima Yumiko, I believe. So you can look into that. But after that, it seems like things really start to pick up steam and you start to get a whole bunch of other catgirls. One that is pointed to as the really more modern catgirl is 1980 Dominion Tank Police, the Puma Sisters. I believe that's a Masamune Shiro, so he did Ghost in the Shell and stuff. And I think they've popped up in other stuff that he's done. So then you get into the 90s and the stuff that we talked about, right? Felicia and Meryl, and then 2000 and all that, more and more moe. So
that's where my knowledge of it starts, personally.
Yeah. So I think we can take a quick break here, and then we'll come back and we'll address some of those other questions we have. Hey, it's time for an advertisement. So I'm going to talk about my other podcast. It's called Japan Station. If you're not aware, I've been releasing that podcast for over a year now. And on that show, I interview just all kinds of people. I've had on Stan Sakai, the creator of Usagi Yojimbo, the comic book character. And I've had on Crystal K, a very well-known singer, and all kinds of writers and filmmakers and scholars. Just really, really interesting people. And you can go check that out at japanstationpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts. It's pretty fun stuff, and I use a whole bunch of train noises. So if you love choo-choo trains, jeez, you can go check that out. So now that this amazing commercial is over, I think it's time to get back to the catgirls. All right, and we're back. So I figured I wanted to take a look at what some of the popular catgirl characters are in recent history. But I was especially interested to know what's popular in Japan, because anybody can look it up in English, but what are the Japanese fans saying is, kind of what I was looking at. So I found a poll from 2015, and it was about 4,100 votes, roughly. And it was a list of 19 characters, but we're just going to go through the top 5. So, and just a disclaimer, I only knew one of these characters.
My disclaimer, I know none of them. Well, I looked up their pictures and I can like kind of recognize two, but I did not know I was so out of touch with the catgirl crowd.
Yeah, well, apparently I'm mostly out of touch. All right. So, number 5.
So number 5 is a character named Dejiko from a series called Panyo Panyo Deji Karato.
Yeah, and I believe that's a prequel to Deji Karato, which is fairly well known.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very small girl, greenish yellow hair with bells.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Anyway, number 4 was Hazuki from Tsukuyomi Moon Phase.
Okay.
Who I've never heard of her or her series.
Me either. Anything you want to say about her?
I looked at her picture too, but I accidentally closed the window, so nope, that's all.
All right, so she is a catgirl. That's what we know. Number 3.
Apparently, yes. Faris Nyanyan? Very good last name. From Steins Gate.
Perfect, yeah. So this is the only one that I know. And in Japanese, they'll pronounce it Feiris. Yeah. I'm not sure what the English dub, probably Ferris, I guess. But this was a character in Steins Gate, and also came up in the follow-up to Steins Gate. I think it was called Steins Gate 0, if I remember correctly. And she is one of the principal characters. She's actually a human, so she probably has the nekomimi, which are like the headband cat ears, and she works as a maid at a maid cafe. And she speaks in nyan, like she adds the nyan at the end of her sentences.
Sonanya.
Yeah, exactly. And she's like a rich girl that for some reason, like, works at a maid cafe. I guess she loves being a cat maid. And the thing that really, like, I really like Steins Gate. Like, I liked both of the series. That is probably one of the anime series one of the few series that I've watched in the recent years that I've really, really enjoyed. But Feiris was just a very random character to me. I guess it makes sense because much of the story takes place in Akihabara, but like there's a part where they're in like a kind of almost post-apocalyptic like fascist government, and they're fighting as a guerrilla. Like all the main characters are part of like this resistance force. And if I remember correctly, she's still speaking like a cat and still like acting like a catgirl. So she's very dedicated to the whole catgirl idea.
So again, knowing nothing about this story, it has a princess catgirl maid who ends up fighting in a post-apocalyptic anti-fascist army.
Well, okay, so she's not a princess; she's just a rich girl.
Okay, rich
but
girl.
The rest was
either way. I like that kind of twist can happen.
Yeah. So she is I don't know, like everybody else speaks pretty normally, although there is like a very stereotypical otaku character who kind of speaks like a very stereotypical otaku character too. So, but anyway, this is the only one that I'm familiar with. So let's move on. Number 2.
Okay, so starting from number 2, I'll point out the number of votes increased dramatically, almost doubled. So I think these are the really popular ones. Number 2 in English would be Sion Hijirikawa from Show by Rock.
Yeah. So, again, no idea with this one, but how many votes?
This one had 838, and the previous one was only 412, so roughly doubled.
Yeah, so big difference.
This one I looked up too. It is a catgirl with blue hair and a heart guitar. And it's a music game. I was going to say,
so
I strongly feel like I've seen pictures of this one around somewhere, but not that familiar with it.
Yeah, just from what I read, that was originally a mobile music game for mobile platforms, and then that turned into an anime too, which was fairly popular, it seems.
Okay.
But didn't watch any of it, so...
Yeah, I guess.
Number 1.
Number 1 is Miniwa Tsumiki from Achikochi.
Yep. Again, no idea. How many votes?
This one was 1,112.
There you go. So Japanese people, apparently, or the ones that are into this sort of thing, love her.
Yeah.
And she's got very long, like, blue hair.
Yeah. Right? This is the one that had that in half of her artwork doesn't even have cat ears, but I guess is a cat girl sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes the cat ears pop up, I guess. All right, so there you go. That's if that meant something to you, then hopefully you enjoyed that.
Sorry, we don't know about your favorite cat girls if you are a diehard fan.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, that was from 2015, so maybe if they were to do it again, things might be a little bit
I've
different.
seen surveys like this of favorite character in something, and from my experience, it changes frequently. Like, most likely, these ones were from things that were brand new back in 2015, or pretty new.
Absolutely. Yeah, Steins Gate was still, I think, just out at around that time, so makes sense. All right, so let's get to the part of this episode that I think really the whole reason why I wanted to do this episode is because I had a lot of questions that I wanted to, discuss about catgirls, and it's not really the historical or the factual things; it's more the hypothetical.
Yeah,
things.
that's the like. Imagine if catgirls were real. What kind of issues would they have? Kind of questions.
Exactly, yeah. So, and one that I think Ryan got a particular kick out of, and we can just go ahead and jump right into it. So, of course, being that catgirls exhibit certain cat behaviors, and they, the ones that are biologically catgirls, not, excluding the ones that just have the fake cat ears, they must share certain biology with cats. Therefore, do they go into heat like a female cat would, right? Do they start meowing wildly in order to attract the mate? What do you think, Ryan?
So, short answer, I have no idea. I'm willing to bet.
Oh, you don't? Jeez.
I mean, if they do, it's kind of unfortunate because, as we've mentioned, the cat boy population is so much smaller than them. They're probably going to have a difficult time finding a mate.
Exactly. Yeah. I they always seem to rely on humans, but I've never seen them, behave in that way. So
from what I've seen,
maybe they do. Maybe
this is usually just like ignored. But I'm willing to bet there's probably some hentai anime somewhere where it is an issue that actually happens.
Oh, absolutely. There must be. I would be surprised if
I can't speak for you, but I did not research that far, at least.
I did not go down that rabbit hole. I think we found plenty to talk about, and we didn't have to resort
So homework
to that
for
one.
the viewer.
Oh yeah, please. If you want to keep our research going, I probably won't have you on as a guest though to share your findings. But, for your own self-satisfaction. But okay, going off of that, and we're just looking at this purely scientifically, if a catgirl were to mate with a human man, right? Would they be able to produce offspring? And if so, would that offspring be infertile? Like in the case of the typical, crossbreeds like mules and ligers, right? Like tiger lions that they cross them. Generally, those are not fertile. They can't keep procreating. I have one piece of evidence for this.
Really? You found evidence?
Well, it actually came up during our conversation. The reader already listened to it. I mean, the listener already heard us.
Oh, the traditional stories?
Fox.
Oh,
yeah, the foxes, right? So there's tons of stories of these like kitsune foxes, right, turning into women, and then finding a human man, and they marry them, and they have a whole life together, and they have children. So
it
would stand to reason, right?
Usually the kids don't exhibit any magic powers of the mother.
As far as I can remember, there might be, but I didn't look too deeply into that, but I know that those exist. So.
The most famous one I can think of, unfortunately, isn't a catgirl, probably the Yuki-onna story, but I believe the kids don't have any sort of magic powers at all. Or at least it's never explicitly mentioned.
Yeah, Snow Woman, right?
Yeah,
so it's probably like Tohoku area, I think, so northeastern Japan. And she's another yokai, right? So it's like a woman from the snow country, but she's actually like, I think she ends up melting, right?
So there's various versions of it. I guess in case the viewer doesn't know, we can cover it.
Yeah.
The setup is always the same, that two travelers are stuck in the snow, and they find a cabin and they stay there. The younger one wakes up to see a mysterious snow spirit, like draining the life energy of his partner. Mm-hmm. And then she says, if you tell anyone about this, I'll kill you. So he just doesn't. Then later on, he meets a beautiful woman. They get married. He thinks that the woman looks exactly like the snow spirit, many years later they have kids, and he says like, oh, by the way, you look like this girl I once saw in the mountains. And then depending on the version, she gets angry at him. It's like, you promised not to tell anyone, and runs away. Or I think some versions she just melts in the summer. There's a whole bunch of variation. I don't remember all of them. The one I heard is that she gets angry at him for revealing her secret to herself, which kind of feels like it's not fair, but usually these things don't have happy endings.
No, they don't. Yeah.
But she doesn't kill him in, I think, all versions because they had kids and she didn't want the kids to be fatherless. So she just runs away and abandons her kids.
So then I think it's safe to say that catgirls can have children with human males.
But as for the fertility, I don't know if that's ever been brought up.
No, well, I challenge some daring manga artists out there to explore this area and answer this for us.
So if you are the child, because I mean, a catgirl is not a cat. So is the child like 1/4 cat, or are you just 1/2 cat person, 1/2 human?
Oh man, that's a good one. Well, you are obviously 1/2 cat person. Now, how much percentage cat is the original person? I mean, the original catgirl, right? That's the question ultimately. In terms of general appearance, it seems like it's mostly human.
Yeah. What if they only have one cat ear and one human ear?
Oh. They got in an alley fight, I guess, huh? Well, actually, that brings up something that I found on a website. It was a Nico-Nico-pedia.
Oh, yes, I forgot to mention that too. I wanted to bring that up. Go ahead.
So, so obviously, there's some catgirls that...
Real quick, since we can phrase this as one of our questions, I'll do that.
Okay.
Do catgirls only have cat ears, or do they also have human ears?
Exactly. So, now, that website that I mentioned that I found mentions something relating to this, in that there are, of course, the fake catgirls, quote unquote, the ones that dress up as a catgirl.
Yeah.
And then there's the real catgirls, which have biological cat ears on their heads. So generally what you see in depictions is that their human ears are covered by hair.
Yes.
So I can't, not that I've looked too deeply into this, but I don't remember seeing one that has real biological cat ears and human ears as well, which is two pairs of ears, right? 4 ears. So
they must have very good hearing.
I would hope so, right? Because they can even move those top ears around like a cat. So, they can pinpoint certain sounds, but they already have the stereo sound from human ears. So they've got a very wide, stereo field, I would assume. But in that website, like, there was just one sentence that made me laugh. And it said, if it bothers you that a catgirl has 4 ears, then just assume that one set is fake. And it said this in Japanese. It was a Japanese person that had written this. So you can take your pick. Maybe you assume the cat ears are the fake ones, or the human ears are the fake ones, right? And if the human ears are the fake ones, then you have to wonder, like, well, why are they putting on the fake human ears?
So,
I don't know.
I just did a quick image search for catgirl to see like what number would have clearly 4 ears, and actually a lot of them do, including.
Oh, there you go. Good.
One who I didn't realize is the if you look up catgirl on Wikipedia, there is like a little catgirl in a maid uniform, who's actually wearing puzzle pieces from Wikipedia's logo on her.
Interesting.
So she is if Wikipedia was a catgirl, it is this girl, and she also has 4 ears.
There you go. All right. So either one set is fake or she has really good hearing.
Yeah. I think generally artists think to draw one without the human ears makes their face look like not well designed. So they
it would look weird.
Yeah. So they either intentionally always hide it with hair, or if the hair is ever knocked up, they will draw a human ear and just hope nobody thinks about it too deeply.
Like us.
But I mean, it's a good reason to give them like really, really good hearing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, catgirls, I mean, cats don't have bad hearing, but they're not exactly famous for super hearing. But I mean, catgirls, now you have an excuse. Superhuman hearing.
On that note, like, do catgirls have night vision, right? Like, are they really good at seeing at night? I don't know. Do they use the litter boxes, right? Like, These are all important questions.
See, these are the things you have to think of if you're that one guy who's trying to make a kid with a catgirl to see if it will be infertile or not, is you might have to have a litter box.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, like, that's a lot of cat litter, like, that you have to buy. Like, how many pounds a week, like, are you going to have to buy? That's a lot.
I feel like we're ruining someone's fantasy waifu catgirl idea.
How dare you? Oh. Anything else you can think of these ridiculous, like,
I mean, there's some other ones, like, do they purr?
Well, that's a good question, yeah. I would, like, just, not that I really have anything at stake here, but I would hope so.
I would assume
like a nice thing. Yeah.
But I mean, they are humans, so you can't just walk up and pet them or it's sexual harassment.
That's true. With permission.
Yes.
Consent. Yeah.
So they probably do,
yeah.
but it's not depicted often because it's only in their privacy.
Yeah, true. And we'd have to... Oh, never mind. I'm not going back to that.
Yeah. I guess the other easy question to bring up is exactly how do they get clothes with their tail?
Well, I mean, either they have to become good seamstresses or they just know someone, right?
Yeah, most of the time in the things they're depicted in, the tail's just sort of like floating up behind them and you don't get a good look. Or they'll put like a little hole or something in the clothing.
Yeah.
A lot of the pictures I'm looking at have them in skirts, which would essentially mean the back is just being lifted up the whole time, but doesn't seem to be the case.
Oh my god, I just thought of something else. Do male cat people spray, right? Because there's the male cats spray, right? Like, that's why you want to spay and neuter like your cats. That's one reason. Maybe
that's why we don't see so many male cat boys.
Oh yeah, they're just unpleasant to be around. Oh dear. Okay. Anything else?
I think I had one, but I kind of forgot it when that issue was brought up.
Okay. Well, if you think of anything, just butt in. But just two other things that I found during this research process that are not like hypothetical, so to speak. Well, one kind of is. I'll start with that one.
Okay.
So just this is really random, and I just stumbled across this website. It's a Japanese website. And the question was, if putting cat ears on a human is cute, then would putting human ears on a cat also be cute?
Of course.
Right? Yeah, right? Like, that's what you would assume, because it's like what's that called? The commutative property or something? It goes both ways. And what they did was they had these like nekomimi, again, like "ske" means to like attach. So they were like these ears that you can put on a cat, and they were human ears. And there's these pictures of these cats that have like human ears on them. And I mean, I guess it's subjective, right? You could say it's cute, but to me it was just weird and funny. So I will put that link in the show notes, because people should absolutely check that out. And the other just totally weird and random thing that I found was, maybe you're familiar with this. I think, Ryan, you are, but if you're particularly young, you may not be, but Josie and the Pussycats.
Oh, yes. Well, I'm vaguely familiar with it. I don't think I've ever actually seen it, but I know
didn't really watch it, but it was around like on Cartoon Network and, like reruns and stuff at some point.
They had a movie not too long ago, I think, too.
I think they made a live action
one,
late 90s, but then I think they made another one.
Yeah, I'm thinking it was like 2010-ish.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I do remember there was a second one, but I didn't watch either. I remember in the first one, Tara Reid was in it, and that's about all I remember. And anyway, so Josie and the Pussycats, I believe it came out in 1970. Cartoon by Hanna-Barbera, American show. And it was this show about these three girls had like a rock band, and they dressed kind of like cats, and they had like cat ears and cat tails. That got released in Japan. And just like when you release a Japanese show in America and you end up changing the title to something totally different, the same thing happened in Japan, because they're not just going to put like Joshi and the Pussycats. Like, nobody's going to know what the heck that is. What they ended up calling it was Dora Dora Koneko to Chaka Chaka Musume. So, it's totally different. So, I believe in the show there's also an actual cat that's kind of like the Josie and the Pussycats mascot, like band mascot. but that I believe is the koneko in that title. So koneko means kitten, literally cat child. And dora dora I believe is like a reference to dora neko, right? Like stray cat. So dora dora is just like a cute way of saying that. Although dora by itself can also mean other things like lazy and loafing. So
isn't stray cat noraneko?
Yeah, but you can also say dora neko. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then there's chaka chaka, which means kind of like energetic or something like that, like really like rowdy kind of thing.
Yeah, I can't think of that. Sounds good to me.
Yeah, and then musume means like literally daughter, but in this case it means like young woman, young lady.
Yeah.
So yeah, the theme song is totally different. I was listening to that, and I will put that in the show notes because it sounds absolutely nothing like the classic, Josie and the Pussycats, right? Like totally different. It's really like amazing. So please go check that out. Show notes.
So that version just sounds better.
Did you listen to it?
I've actually never heard the English one either.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, go check that out later. Yeah, I think that's about all the really weird stuff that I found. But if you can't think of anything else.
I just checked the picture of the cat with human ears, and that is definitely cute.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's weird.
Yeah, it's absolutely bizarre, but you could say it's cute.
I've never seen it, but I heard there's a Reddit community that edits pictures of ducks to put human arms on them. So I guess it's in that vein.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's a Reddit for everything.
Yeah. That's another thing that I will look into just because. Why not? Anyway, so anything else you want to add, Ryan?
Nah, I'm good.
All right. I think we've talked plenty about this subject. Hopefully you enjoyed that. And if you want to get more stuff, then make sure to stop by japankyo.com. You can go to the podcast. Again, Japan Station. That's the other podcast I do. Or you can check out, maybe, if by the time you're listening to this, there's other episodes out already, you can check out more of Ichimon Japan. And, of course, wherever you get your podcasts. So we'll leave it at that. And make sure to come back later where we'll be asking some bizarre question or some funny question about Japan on the next episode.
There's lots to ask.
There's a whole list. So
literally.
Yeah. All right then. So thanks for tuning in. See you next time, Ryan.
See you next time.
Hey, so Tony here. Thanks for listening to episode 1 and for sticking around all the way till the very end. So Ryan and I recorded this episode several months ago, and between the time that we recorded it and that I released it, I decided to, have someone draw me a catgirl, okay? And it couldn't be just any catgirl. I wanted it to be inspired by today's conversation. And as you heard, we talked about some pretty weird things today. And I wanted to see what a catgirl looked like with 4 ears, right? So I wanted to get the hair out of the way so we could fully appreciate the 4 ears. So I had this person draw me a catgirl that was completely bald, right? Her head was just totally bald. And I called her Hagenyan because Hage means bald and Yan means like meow, right? Like a cat goes meow, it goes nya in Japanese. So Hagenyan. And this image is just cracked me up when I saw it, but it's a bald cat girl with cat ears and human ears, and you can check it out at the blog post for episode 1 of Ichimon Japan. You can go to japankyo.com, look it up in the podcast section, or you can just go to the show notes. I'm going to include the link in the show notes, so you can just click on that and check out Hagenyan in all her glory, all her 4 wonderful ears. So go check that out.